They told me I was a disgrace, that I had thrown my future away. My mother stopped introducing me as her son. My father wouldn't look me in the eye unless he had something to criticize. At family dinners, I sat at the far end of the table, close enough to serve, but never close enough to be seen. I once built something that changed lives, helped people who've been forgotten feel human again. But in my own family, I was just the failure who didn't finish med school. And the irony, the woman my brother's about to marry, she looked me in the eyes and said, "You're the one who gave me my grandfather back." And suddenly, silence had no place to hide. My name is Ethan Carter, and for a long time I tried to stay small, polite, quiet, invisible. But some truths don't stay buried forever. Some truths walk into a room and refuse to leave unnoticed. Before I share my story, I want to know you're here with me. Just say listening in the comments or tell me where you are. I love hearing how far my story reach. Sometimes even the smallest connection can make a story feel heard. Thank you. And now, here's my story. It was supposed to be Matt's night. The whole room was dressed in soft gold lighting and the clinking of champagne glasses, crystal vases, linen napkins, those tiny forks no one knows how to use. It all screamed prestige. The kind of setting where every smile hides a checklist and every nod says we belong. I was seated at the far end of the banquet table. Not by chance. My mother had walked in ahead of me and discreetly pointed at the chair, the one closest to the kitchen entrance, the one where servers brush past your elbow without apologizing. She'd done it smoothly, like placing a vase where it wouldn't ruin the centerpiece. "Just for tonight," she'd whispered. "Sure." From my spot, I could see Matt laughing with Lauren's parents. My little brother, MBA finance firm, sleek haircut, all the boxes ticked. Lauren looked radiant, and I meant that without bitterness. She had a kindness to her that wasn't performative, which made her an anomaly in the room. Halfway through the meal, when the music softened and guests began drifting into polite chatter, she turned toward me. Her smile was warm, not pitying, just genuinely curious. "So, Ethan," she asked, "what is it that you do?" My fork paused halfway. I wiped my mouth with my napkin, felt the familiar pressure build behind my ribs, and exhaled quietly. "I run a tech platform," I said. "Help seniors get comfortable with digital tools." That was it. No buzzwords, no pitch. Lauren tilted her head. "Wait, HeartLink." I looked at her. Her eyes narrowed, the kind of narrowing that happens when a memory struggles to surface. Then they widened, recognition flashing like a struck match. "Oh my God, you're the founder of HeartLink." Her voice wasn't loud, but the room noticed. Matt turned his head. My mother stopped mid-sip. My father's brow furrowed like he'd misheard something unpleasant. Lauren stood up. No warning, no hesitation. Her chair scraped softly against the wood floor, and all conversation near us died instantly. "I had no idea," she said, looking straight at me. "My grandfather, he'd stopped speaking to anyone. After my grandmother passed, he didn't even answer the phone. We thought we lost him." Her voice broke slightly, not with drama, but sincerity. But then someone at the center helped him set up HeartLink. And suddenly he was emailing, sending us voice notes. He even FaceTimed my little brother on his birthday. She turned toward the guests. "That's because of Ethan." People looked at me like I just stood up in the middle of a funeral and started singing. I didn't say anything. I just sat there while Lauren looked at me with something I hadn't seen from my own family in over a decade. Respect. And something deeper. Gratitude. My father's mouth opened, then shut. My mother blinked, lips twitching with the kind of smile that doesn't know whether it's proud or confused. And Matt, his expression didn't move. He just stared. That night, for the first time in years, I didn't feel like background noise. I didn't need applause. Lauren's eyes were enough. And for one undeniable moment, I wasn't invisible anymore. My name is Ethan Carter. I'm 35 years old. I live on the attic floor above a used bookstore in Seattle, Washington. It smells like old paper and second chances. There was a time I was supposed to be the pride of the Carter family. Firstborn, 4.2 to GPA, early admission to Duke School of Medicine. My father's eyes used to light up when I talked about anatomy. My mother used to introduce me at church as our future surgeon. Then sophomore year happened. I didn't crash and burn. That would have made sense. Instead, I faded slowly, quietly. I stopped going to labs, slept through exams. One day, I just stopped showing up. No drama, no big breakdown. I just couldn't do it anymore. I told my mom over the phone that I was dropping out. She didn't yell. She just said, "Okay, honey, maybe you just need a little time to rest." Then she told the family I was taking a break to recalibrate. That was more than 13 years ago. Since then, there's always been a pause when someone asked about me, a polite shuffle in conversation. I became the son who needed space, the one figuring things out. I worked odd jobs for years. Warehouse gigs, night shifts at a diner helping a friend organize wedding rentals. Enough to pay rent, enough to stay busy. But it wasn't living. It was floating. Then, one afternoon, while delivering coffee to a Maple Grove assisted living, I noticed a woman in her late 70s struggling with a tablet. She had tears in her eyes and kept saying, "My daughter said it's simple, but I can't see her face." I knelt down and helped her open FaceTime. We got the camera working. Her daughter answered. That woman cried for 10 minutes straight, just whispered, "Baby, baby," over and over. Something clicked in me. So I started going back volunteering, showing up at centers' coffee shops, anywhere people over 65 needed to learn how to text their grandchildren. It wasn't a business at first. It wasn't even a plan. I just needed something to pull me out of bed. Years later, I called it HeartLink. It's not glamorous. It's not flashy, but it's real. My parents don't ask about it. To them, I'm still the son who dropped out and never got back on track. But sometimes at 2:00 a.m., I'll get an email from someone in Eastern Washington thanking me for helping them hear their sister's voice again. And that, more than any diploma or family approval, is what keeps me going. They never saw me, but I kept building anyway. Not for them. For everyone who's ever felt like a voice echoing in an empty room. I visited my parents' house the week before the engagement party, not because I was needed, but because I thought maybe this time someone would say they missed me. The house looked the same. Pristine lawn, a little ceramic angel still perched by the porch steps, and wind chimes that hadn't aged a day since I left for college. But inside, things had shifted. There was a new photo wall in the hallway leading to the kitchen. Frame memories, glossy and perfect, arranged like a curated museum of Matt's success, his graduation from Columbia Business School, a candid shot of him with Lauren at a vineyard, even a professionally staged family photo with her parents all dressed in navy and beige, like they'd agreed on a palette for happiness. I scanned the wall, not expecting much, and I found myself once a snapshot from a family trip to Yellowstone when I was maybe 10, shoved into the bottom corner, close to the floorboards. I had braces and a crooked haircut holding a fishing rod I never learned how to use. The frame had a small crack in the glass. No one had bothered to replace it. I stepped over it like you'd step over an old doormat. Dinner was roast chicken and potatoes, just like old times. Mom sat the table in quiet ceremony, humming to herself while Dad scrolled on his tablet. Matt arrived late, apologizing with a bottle of wine. Lauren wasn't with him. "She's got a dress fitting," he said, kissing Mom's cheek. Halfway through the meal, I got up to grab a glass of water. On my way back, I caught my mom's voice drifting from the dining room as she spoke to a friend on speakerphone. Matt's always been the one who knew how to pick a safe path. Not like Ethan. He always chased dreams too big for his hands. My fingers clenched around the glass. I smiled when I sat back down. Nobody noticed. They never do. That night, back in my attic apartment, I opened my inbox and scrolled to an old email I'd sent them a few months ago. The subject line was, "I got featured." It was a link to a podcast, an interview I did for a tech and social impact channel with a modest following. We talked about how HeartLink started, how we'd grown from neighborhood cafes to state-funded pilot programs. That episode had over 25,000 listens. No one replied to that email, not even a thumbs up. I checked the analytics. 0 opens from any Carter family address. I still had the old pair of headphones I used during that interview. They were duct-taped at the ear pads, the cord fraying where it met the jack. I wrapped them up slowly, like folding an old letter, and tucked them into a small box under my desk. It wasn't just about the gear. It was a ritual like bearing the hope that one day someone from my family would listen to my voice and hear pride. At our next family dinner, they were celebrating Matt's promotion to a senior consultant role. Dad toasted. Mom teared up. A cousin asked if they'd found a good wedding band yet. Laughter filled the room like warm smoke. No one turned to ask, "And what about you, Ethan?" I smiled and passed the salt. A few weeks later, an email showed up in the HeartLink system. Subject: stories that matter. Submission. The program was something we'd launched to gather real user stories, moments where technology truly bridged something deeper than convenience. There was a video attached. Title for Grandpa's sender, Lauren M. At first, the name didn't click. I just figured it was another heartfelt note from a granddaughter with a tech-savvy elder. I opened the video. Lauren sat beside an older man. He must have been in his 85s. Wrinkled hands resting on his knees, back slightly hunched but eyes alert. The kind that held entire stories without saying much. He looked like someone who'd once been strong enough to lift the world and now just wanted to hold on to a conversation. Lauren was smiling at him, gently holding his arm. After Grandpa had his minor stroke, she began. He stopped talking much. Didn't want to leave the house. He didn't even answer the phone. We thought we were losing him, not physically, but bit by bit emotionally. She turned slightly toward the camera. Then someone at his Maple Grove assisted living helped him set up HeartLink. It took a while, but then everything changed. She motioned to him, and the old man waved awkwardly at the lens. "He calls us every Tuesday now. He sends us little voice notes. He even ordered a book on astronomy online. He's always loved the stars. And he told me last night, 'This makes me feel like I'm still part of this world.'" I couldn't move. Then came the part that knocked the breath out of me. "I don't know who started HeartLink." She continued, her voice slightly cracking. "But whoever you are, thank you. You didn't just give my grandpa a way to speak again. You reminded him he was still alive." I sat there, eyes locked on the screen, while the old man reached out and held Lauren's hand. They didn't know it was me. She didn't know I was the founder. She didn't know the man she was about to marry had a brother. The guy seated in the shadows during the engagement party who had built the thing that gave her grandfather his voice back. And yet she thanked me without even knowing who I was. I didn't respond to the email, didn't forward it, didn't even mark it as H approved for the campaign, but I downloaded the video, saved it into a private folder named Reel. And that night, for the first time in a long time, I let myself cry. Not because I was sad, but because in that moment I realized something cruel and beautiful. Sometimes the ones closest to you won't see you. But strangers will sometimes look right into your work and see your soul. The night before the engagement party, we had dinner at my parents' house. Not a formal thing, just one of those family dinners that somehow always end up being performance reviews for Matt and awkward silences for me. Mom made her famous pot roast. Dad set the table. Matt brought a bottle of Pinot that Mom gushed over for a solid 6 minutes. I brought a story, but no one asked for it. As soon as we sat down, Matt launched into updates from work. "They're giving me oversight over 2 more teams," he said, slicing into the roast. The client in Houston is expanding, so I'll probably be flying out more this quarter." "That's wonderful," Mom beamed. "And what about your bonus this year? Did they finalize it?" "Should be about $35K, Matt said casually, as if it was a pack of gum. Dad nodded. "Proud of you, son." I sat there cutting lettuce on my plate, watching the scene play out like a sitcom I didn't audition for. No one asked what I was working on. No one asked about the platform I'd been building for years, so I volunteered. Actually, I started trying to sound light. We had a user in Tacoma, 93 years old, who called his great-granddaughter over video last week. First time in her life hearing his voice, I said, he thought he'd never get to tell her happy birthday again. I looked up, hopeful for anything. Dad raised an eyebrow. "That's nice. Still doing that volunteer tech stuff, huh?" "It's not exactly volunteer," I began. Matt chuckled lightly. Not unkindly, just dismissively, like I'd brought up my childhood coin collection again. Mom leaned in a bit too cheerful. "Don't bring that up at the engagement party." "Okay, Lauren's family is very traditional. They admire professionalism, structured careers. I don't want them to get the wrong impression." I didn't say anything, just nodded, but something under my skin started to burn. After dinner, I helped clear the table. As Mom handed me the stack of plates, she sighed and said it like she was talking to herself. "Thank goodness for Matt. At least there's someone in this family we can really be proud of." I froze for a second, then carried the dishes to the kitchen, rinsed them under cold water, and excused myself early, claiming I had work to finish. On the walk home, I felt more hollow than angry. That kind of cold that doesn't sting but just settles deep like fog. When I got back to my apartment and I opened my inbox and found an email from the Washington State Innovation Council. HeartLink had been selected as a showcase project at the Civic Tech Forum next month. My name founder and lead developer was listed right there. And yet all I could think about was how none of it mattered to the people I wanted it to matter to most. Because the deepest pain isn't being unrecognized. It's knowing the people you love never even look long enough to decide if you were worth recognizing. 10 days before the party, Mom sent me an email with the subject line, "Let's make a great impression." It had 3 image attachments, each of a different suit. One was a tan ensemble that screamed wealthy country club. Another was charcoal gray, stiff, and boxy. The third looked like something a TV news anchor might wear in the 90s. Beneath the images, she'd written, "Don't wear anything too dark or too plain. This time you should look like someone respectable." I read the line 3 times. This time, this wasn't the first time she tried to manage my appearance. In elementary school, she once changed my entire outfit 20 minutes before class pictures because blue makes you look tired. In high school, she told me not to wear black to a friend's funeral, said it made grief look too intense for others to handle. But what stuck this time wasn't the suits. It was the final sentence. "Lauren's family has high standards. Please don't make me feel ashamed." I sat back in my chair staring at the screen. Not angry, not hurt, just cold again. I remembered being 13, skipping soccer tryouts to draw a portrait for the school art fair. I was proud of it. A full-page charcoal sketch of my dog Buddy. When I showed Mom, she looked at it, then at me, and said, "That's nice, but don't let people think you're different. It's better to blend in." From then on, I learned not to show her the parts of me that didn't fit, the things that weren't easily framed in a report card or a college acceptance letter. Now here I was, a grown man, still being told what costume to wear so I wouldn't embarrass the people who'd stopped seeing me years ago. I called Matt later that evening. "Hey," I asked, "does Lauren's family actually care about dress codes, or is this just Mom again?" He hesitated. "I think Mom's just stressed, man. You know how she gets." That was all he said, and that was enough. Nobody was going to challenge her because everyone knew the rules, even if no one liked them. Stay in the lines. Don't ask too many questions. Don't make it weird. I hung up and stood in front of my closet. There weren't many options. I had 2 suits that still fit. One navy tailored, nothing flashy but sharp enough. I chose that one, not to provoke her, not to rebel, just to finally pick something for myself without asking if it matched the version of me they'd written into the family script. I wasn't trying to ruin the picture. I was just done pretending I belonged in it. It was one of those drizzly Seattle afternoons where the sky felt like wet concrete and the windows of the coffee shop glowed warm against the cold. I was seated across from Sophie, our new intern at HeartLink, a 20-year-old with bright eyes, chip nail polish, and more questions than hours in the day. She was sketching out UI improvements for a trial version of our new interface, pausing only to sip her chai latte or throw out thoughts like, "What if we replace the icons with full words? Most of our users aren't familiar with symbols." She wasn't wrong. As she talked, I found myself half distracted by the sound of the espresso machine and the quiet jazz humming overhead. Then a voice broke through from the next table. It was clear and a little shaky, like it had to push past some years to be heard. "Excuse me," an older woman said. "Are you Ethan Carter?" I turned, surprised. "Yes, ma'am, I am." She smiled, eyes lighting up. "I just wanted to say thank you. My father, he's 87. We thought he'd given up on everything after his stroke, but last week he sent me an email. Just a single sentence, but it was more than we'd had in months. He said, 'Love you always, Dad.' That was your doing." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded, grateful. After she left, Sophie's mouth was still hanging open a little. "You didn't tell me people recognize you," she said. "They usually don't." I replied, sipping my coffee. A few moments passed before Sophie looked at me again. "Does your family know what HeartLink is doing?" "Like, really know?" I stared at the steam curling from my cup. "They know," I said slowly. "They just never asked." The words hung in the air like fog. Sophie nodded, her eyes gentle but knowing. She didn't say anything else, and I was grateful for that. When I got back to the office later that day, I checked my inbox. One email stood out. Community Tech Outreach Library Integration Pilot. It was from the Washington State Library Board. They were choosing HeartLink as a pilot program for 14 rural branches. It was the kind of milestone most people celebrate with champagne, or at least a high five. I read it silently, scrolled to the bottom. CC'd on the email were heads of several regional library systems. One name caught my eye. Peter Collins, Lauren's father. I leaned back in my chair. The world, it seemed, had a strange way of circling back around. The rooftop restaurant glimmered with candles and curated elegance. Gold-trim menus, strings of soft white lights overhead, and the kind of wine that came with a store you were supposed to nod politely at. The table stretched long like a runway for approval. I arrived exactly on time. Mom glanced at my navy suit, gave a brief nod. "At least he ironed it," her eyes seemed to say. Dad looked up from his phone, then turned his attention to the centerpiece. I took my seat, of course, at the end of the table. People began trickling in, greeting Matt and Lauren with congratulations, toasts, and picture requests. It was the kind of affair where everyone smiles but only half listens. Lauren made her rounds graceful and attentive until she stopped at my end. Her smile was warm but curious. "I don't think I ever asked," she said. "What do you do?" I answered simply. "I run a platform called HeartLink." She paused. "Wait, HeartLink, like the app that helps seniors video chat and order groceries and stuff." I nodded once, her brow furrowed. She tilted her head. "That can't be. That's what helped my grandpa. He started calling us again, sending pictures. We thought we'd lost him after the stroke." Her voice dropped slightly, like the moment was becoming too real. "He said it gave him a reason to get up in the morning again." There was a beat of silence. Then, out of nowhere, Lauren stood up. Her voice carried down the long table like a sudden gust of wind. "I just want to take a moment," she said, glancing at the guests, "to thank the person who gave my grandfather back his dignity." Conversations halted. Silverware froze midair. She looked directly at me. "Ethan? I had no idea it was you. Thank you. Thank you for giving me time with him I thought I'd never get again." I felt the air thin around us. Someone set their wine glass down too softly. Someone else coughed. Mom adjusted her napkin. Dad stared into his drink like it held an answer. Matt's face was unreadable. Lauren stepped closer, her eyes glistening. "Are you the founder?" I nodded once. I just wanted to connect people who shouldn't be forgotten. That's all I said. No defense, no grand declaration, just that one truth I'd lived quietly for years. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It wasn't cold. It was heavy with realization. Lauren reached down and gently squeezed my hand. "Thank you," she whispered again, "for giving my family back something we didn't know we'd lost." I didn't speak. I didn't need to, because for the first time, silence didn't mean being overlooked. It meant I'd finally been seen. The morning after the engagement party, I woke up before the sun even bothered to rise. Not out of anxiety, not out of excitement, just quiet like my insides had matched the stillness outside. I made my way through the still sleeping streets of Seattle, the chill air soft on my skin. I walked with no urgency, no destination in mind other than the coffee shop I've been visiting for years. Same corner table, same cracked leather seat, same flat white no sugar. As I waited, watching steam rise from the espresso machine like breath on a winter window. My phone buzzed. A message from Matt. An Emmenhoy. No punctuation, no emojis, no explanations. Just that a sentence so simple it could have been missed. Except it wasn't. I stared at the screen. My hand trembled. Not dramatically, not like in the movies. Just enough to spill a thought or two inside me I hadn't touched in years. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. It was something else entirely. Like a knot you'd forgotten was there. Finally came loose quietly. I didn't reply. I didn't delete it either. I just let it sit. A message with no decoration. A door left slightly ajar. Suddenly, my mind drifted. Back to 11th grade. I'd been practicing for a public speaking competition. Matt, gangly and loud at the time, had asked me what I was preparing for. That was the last time he'd shown interest in anything I did. Since then, years of silence, not coldness, just absence. That message didn't fix everything, but it didn't have to. It was enough to shake something loose inside me that had been stuck far too long. I left the shop, coffee in hand, wind at my back. On the way home, I passed the bookstore I used to live above. The display window was crowded with colorful covers and chalkboard quotes. One book almost hidden in the corner had a title that stopped me. "Let them see you in your own light." I stood there reading those words again and again. Then slowly I walked inside. 3 weeks later, I was back at my desk, the late afternoon sun warming the edge of the room as I finalized a custom version of HeartLink. This one was different. It had larger buttons, simplified menus, voice-guided tutorials, specifically designed for the Maple Grove assisted living where Lauren's grandfather had lived. It came with a lifetime access code, priority support line, and pre-installed shortcuts for things like family video calls, music streaming, even digital books. I placed it all on a USB drive, slid it into a small envelope, and tucked in a letter I'd written by hand. No signature, no sender, just a few lines in clean, unshaken handwriting. Some connections keep going even when words stop. Thank you for helping me hear a voice I thought I'd lost. I didn't tell Lauren. I didn't mention it to Matt. No one else needed to know. It wasn't about making a point. It wasn't about finally being recognized. It was about giving something back quietly to the thread of humanity that had kept me going when I didn't have anything else. That evening I stood in front of my refrigerator. The hum of the compressor was the only sound in the room. I pulled a new note from my wallet, written, "Not for anyone else, but for me." I stuck it on the door, right above the handle. "They'll call you a failure until one day they ask how you did it. No flourish, no signature, just truth." I caught my reflection in the brushed metal of the door clearer than usual. I was standing tall, not trying to prove anything, not waiting for applause, just here. And in that silent space, I realized sometimes the loudest victories are the ones no one hears but you. That's the end of my story, at least for now. Thank you for sticking with me, for listening to something that wasn't always easy to say out loud. See you next time. Share your thoughts on this video. Until next time, take care of your heart, and remember, even the quietest voices matter, especially yours.